What if I told you that thousands of years ago, ancient cultures described inventions that wouldn't exist until centuries later? Think about that for a moment. People who lived long before the age of electricity, before the first airplane took flight, even before the printing press, somehow envisioned technologies that would reshape our modern world. It's not just one or two strange coincidences. Across civilizations, from the sands of Egypt to the temples of Greece, from the scrolls of India to the legends of Mesoamerica, there are stories, artifacts, and writings that seem to predict the future with uncanny accuracy. Flying machines described in Sanskrit texts, mechanical computers etched into bronze, visions of handheld devices that mimic our smartphones. These aren't just myths, they're blueprints waiting for humanity to catch up. Today, we're diving into 25 jaw-dropping examples of ancient cultures predicting modern technology. Picture this, a world where Leonardo da Vinci's sketches of helicopters weren't the first of their kind, where Greek philosophers dreamed of robots, where Chinese alchemists hinted at the secrets of chemical propulsion. These aren't wild guesses or lucky strikes, they're precise, detailed, and often startlingly accurate. How did they know? Were they tapping into some lost wisdom, or did they possess knowledge that history forgot? Some of these predictions are so exact, they'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the timeline of human innovation. This journey isn't just about marveling at the past, it's about reimagining what's possible. Because if ancient minds could envision the world we live in today, what does that say about the ideas we dismiss as impossible right now? As we unravel these 25 mysteries together, you'll see history in a whole new light. From the Antikythera Mechanism, a 2,000-year-old device some call the world's first analog computer, to the Vimanas flying machines of ancient India, each example challenges the boundaries of what we assume about progress. So settle in, because by the end of this, you might just wonder whether innovation is a straight line or something far more mysterious. Let's start with one of the most mind-bending artifacts ever uncovered, the Antikythera Mechanism. Discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece in 1901, this bronze device, roughly the size of a shoebox, lay hidden beneath the sea for over 2,000 years. At first glance, it looked like a corroded lump of metal, but when researchers painstakingly cleaned and examined it, they realized they were holding something extraordinary. This wasn't just an ancient relic, it was a precision-engineered machine, a complex system of interlocking gears that could predict the movements of the sun, moon, and planets with astonishing accuracy. Think about that for a moment. While most of Europe was still centuries away from the mechanical clocks of the Middle Ages, the Greeks had already built a device that could track celestial events like an astronomical calendar. The mechanism's gears were arranged to model the irregular motions of the moon, account for eclipses, and even chart the positions of the 5 known planets at the time. It's as if someone took the inner workings of a modern-day clock and combined it with the functionality of an advanced scientific calculator. What makes the Antikythera Mechanism truly staggering is its sophistication. Modern X-ray imaging revealed tiny inscriptions and gear teeth so precisely cut that they rival the craftsmanship of 18th-century clockmakers. Some researchers believe it might have been used to determine the timing of the Olympic Games or to navigate the seas by the stars. And here's the kicker: nothing even remotely this advanced shows up in the historical record again until over 1,000 years later. So how did this level of technology exist in the 1st century BCE, only to vanish for centuries? Was it the work of a lone genius, or did the ancient Greeks possess knowledge we've only just rediscovered? The Antikythera Mechanism doesn't just challenge our assumptions about ancient technology, it rewrites them. If something this complex was possible 2,000 years ago, what else might have been lost to time? It's a haunting reminder that history isn't always a straight line of progress. Sometimes the past holds secrets far more advanced than we ever imagined. The legacy of the Antikythera mechanism stretches far beyond its broken gears and faded inscriptions. It's a ghostly echo of knowledge that vanished for over a millennium. Imagine the ripple effect if this device hadn't been lost at sea. Would the scientific revolution have happened centuries earlier? While we can't rewrite history, we do know that when the mechanism was finally rediscovered, it sent shockwaves through the scientific community. For decades, scholars struggled to accept that ancient Greeks could have built something so precise. It wasn't until the 1970s, when advanced X-ray technology revealed its inner workings, that the full scope of its genius became undeniable. What's even more fascinating is how this 2,000-year-old device mirrors principles we still use today. The differential gear, a component essential to modern cars and machinery, was thought to have been invented in the 16th century. Yet here it was, quietly embedded in the Antikythera mechanism, turning celestial predictions into mechanical motion. It's as if the creators cracked a code that wouldn't be fully understood again until the Industrial Revolution. Some researchers speculate this wasn't even their most advanced work. Cicero, the Roman philosopher, wrote about a similar device built by Archimedes, a bronze globe that mapped the heavens. Could the Antikythera mechanism be a descendant of even earlier, lost technologies? Then there's the question of who designed it. The leading theory points to the island of Rhodes, a hub of astronomy and engineering in the ancient world. Hipparchus, often called the greatest astronomer of antiquity, worked there, and his groundbreaking theories on the moon's irregular orbit are mirrored in the mechanism's gearwork. But here's the twist. The device also accounts for solar eclipses using a Babylonian arithmetic cycle unknown to Greek science at the time. This suggests a collaboration across civilizations, a melting pot of knowledge that history barely recorded. But the real mystery isn't just how they built it, it's why this technology disappeared. The Roman Empire's rise, with its focus on conquest rather than innovation, may have scattered or silenced the thinkers behind such devices. Or perhaps fragile bronze mechanisms simply didn't survive the centuries, leaving no trail for later inventors to follow. Whatever the reason, the Antikythera mechanism stands as a haunting what-if. It forces us to wonder how many other leaps forward were forgotten, buried, or drowned beneath the waves, and yet, in a way, it did inspire the future. When Jacques Cousteau revisited the shipwreck in the 1970s, he found coins hinting at a wealthy patron, proof that even then, cutting-edge science required investment. Fast forward to today, and we see its legacy in modern planetariums, space probes, and even the algorithms that power our digital star maps. The ancients may not have had our tools, but they shared our curiosity. Their mistake wasn't in their designs, it was assuming that future generations would remember them. So next time you check a weather app or watch an eclipse prediction, remember, you're witnessing a tradition that might trace back to a shoebox-sized marvel lost beneath the Mediterranean. The Antikythera mechanism isn't just a relic, it's a warning and an invitation. A warning that knowledge, no matter how advanced, is fragile, and an invitation to look up just as they did and wonder what else we might have missed. Long before the Wright brothers took to the skies, another brilliant mind was already mapping the secrets of flight. Not with blueprints for wooden biplanes, but with intricate sketches of spiral rotors and bat-like wings. Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, filled in the late 15th century, contained designs so advanced they could pass for early concepts of modern helicopters and gliders. His famous aerial screw, drawn around 1489, features a towering spiral blade that looks uncannily like the rotor system of a Chinook or Apache helicopter. And his ornithopter, a human-powered flying machine with flapping wings, might seem fanciful at first glance until you realize it mirrors the basic principles of today's experimental ornithopters and drone technology. What's truly remarkable isn't just the resemblance to modern aircraft, but how Da Vinci arrived at these ideas. He didn't have wind tunnels or computational models, he had birds. For years, he obsessively studied the mechanics of avian flight, dissecting wings, sketching feather patterns, and noting how air currents interacted with each movement. His notebooks are filled with observations like a bird is an instrument working according to mathematical law, revealing his belief that flight wasn't magic, but a puzzle of physics waiting to be solved. He even designed a parachute pyramidal in shape that was successfully tested in 2008 and proved functional despite being sketched 500 years prior. But here's where it gets eerie. Da Vinci's helicopter design wasn't just a vague doodle, it included precise notes about materials, scale, and even the need for a power source strong enough to lift humans. He wrote of using flaxen cloth stiffened with starch to create the screw's surface, a lightweight solution not unlike modern composite materials. And while his ornithopter never took flight, its articulated wings foreshadowed the variable angle rotor systems used in tiltrotor aircraft like the V-22 Osprey. Some engineers argue that if Da Vinci had access to lightweight metals or engines, his designs might have soared centuries earlier. The real mystery, though, is how much further his ideas could have gone if they'd been widely known. Unlike the Antikythera Mechanism, Da Vinci's work wasn't lost, it was hidden. His notebooks were scattered after his death, with many pages vanishing into private collections for generations. What if those designs had fallen into the hands of an inventor during the Industrial Revolution? Would flight have been revolutionized earlier? It's a tantalizing thought, especially when you consider that modern helicopter pioneers like Igor Sikorsky admitted they'd never seen Da Vinci's sketches before creating their own prototypes. Yet perhaps the most striking lesson lies in Da Vinci's process. He didn't just imagine flying machines, he reverse-engineered them from nature, proving that the best innovations often begin with observation. In an age without textbooks or formal engineering, he used the world around him as a blueprint. When engineers today study biomimicry, designing drones modeled after hummingbirds or wind turbines inspired by whale fins, they're walking the same path Da Vinci carved in charcoal and ink. His genius wasn't just in predicting the future of flight, but in revealing how closely tied innovation is to the natural world. So the next time you board a plane or watch a helicopter slice through the sky, remember, the seeds of those technologies were planted by a man who never saw them take flight, but whose mind soared far beyond the limits of his time. Da Vinci's sketches weren't just dreams, they were a roadmap waiting for the world to catch up. Da Vinci's flying machines were just the beginning of his visionary genius. Buried in those same notebooks are designs that could have rewritten the history of warfare, like a blueprint for what might be the world's first armored tank. Picture this, a conical shell of wood reinforced with metal plates, studded with cannons pointing in every direction and powered by crankshafts turned by men inside. It's a design so eerily close to modern tanks that when British engineers first saw the sketches during World War I, they reportedly joked that Da Vinci had beaten them to the patent office by 400 years. But here's what's even more astonishing. His tank wasn't just a rough idea. He calculated the gear ratios needed to move its massive weight, designed sloped armor to deflect projectiles, a technique still used today, and even included ventilation shafts to clear gunpowder smoke. The only flaw, his intentional mistake. Fearing the destructive potential of his creation, Da Vinci drew the gear system incorrectly, ensuring it would never work if built. It's a chilling reminder that even in the Renaissance, the ethics of invention weighed on his mind. Then there's his submarine. Centuries before Jules Verne penned 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Da Vinci sketched a sleek, wooden submersible with a snorkel system for air and retractable spikes to pierce enemy hulls. He described crews using leather suits and bladder bags to breathe underwater, a primitive but recognizable ancestor of modern diving gear. But like the tank, he kept these designs secret, writing in mirrored script that such machines were too deadly to share. Whether out of fear or moral hesitation, Da Vinci seemed to understand that some technologies demand responsibility long before the atomic age forced that lesson on humanity. Yet nothing compares to his robotic knight. Discovered tucked between anatomical studies in his notebooks, this full-sized automaton designed around 1495 could sit up, wave its arms, and even move its jaw via an intricate system of pulleys and cables. It wasn't just a puppet. Da Vinci modeled its mechanics after human muscles and tendons, creating what experts now call the first programmable humanoid robot. Modern engineers at NASA have even used his designs as inspiration for space exploration robots, proving that his understanding of biomechanics was centuries ahead of its time. What ties these inventions together isn't just their prescience, it's Da Vinci's method. He didn't guess, he reverse-engineered nature. His tank mirrored a turtle shell. His submarine mimicked fish bladders. His robot replicated the skeletal system. In an era without the scientific method, he practiced something even more powerful: observation as innovation. The tragedy: most of these designs were never built in his lifetime. Some, like the submarine, lacked materials strong enough to realize his vision. Others were deliberately suppressed. But their rediscovery centuries later sparks an unsettling question. How many other Da Vincis lived and died without their notebooks being found? How many breakthroughs were lost to time, only to be reinvented millennia later? Da Vinci's legacy isn't just about predicting the future. It's a testament to the fragile thread that connects genius to progress, and perhaps a warning: next time you dismiss an idea as impossible, remember, the man who sketched helicopters in the 1400s would have understood it perfectly. Deep in the basement of the National Museum of Iraq lies an object that shouldn't exist: a small clay jar, no bigger than a fist, with a stopper made of asphalt. Inside, a rolled copper sheet hugs an iron rod, all encased in the jar's terracotta walls. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary ancient storage vessel, until you realize it bears an eerie resemblance to something far more modern: a battery. Known as the Baghdad Battery, this 2,000-year-old artifact, dated to the Parthian period around 200 BCE, might just rewrite what we thought we knew about the origins of electrical experimentation. The discovery, made in 1936 near the village of Kayat Rabawa, was initially dismissed as a curious storage jar, but when German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig examined it closely, he noticed something peculiar. The iron rod showed signs of acidic corrosion, as if it had been submerged in a vinegar or lemon juice solution. The copper cylinder, too, bore marks consistent with electrochemical reactions. Koenig's radical theory: this wasn't a container for scrolls or spices. It was a primitive galvanic cell capable of generating a small electric current when filled with an electrolyte like grape juice or vinegar. Modern reconstructions have proven Koenig right. Fill a replica with an acidic solution, and it produces around 0.8 volts, not enough to light a bulb, but sufficient for electroplating gold onto silver, a technique the Parthians were known to use. Archaeologists have even found Mesopotamian artifacts with gold coatings too thin to be applied by heat alone, suggesting they might have been gilded using these very batteries. The implications are staggering. While scholars once believed the principles of electricity weren't understood until the 18th century, these jars hint that ancient craftsmen could have harnessed its power over a millennium earlier. Yet the mystery only deepens when you consider the context. The Parthians weren't just warriors, they were master metallurgists trading with cultures from Rome to India. Could knowledge of basic electrochemistry have traveled along these routes? Some historians point to ancient Egyptian texts describing shining gold applied to statues, or the legendary dendrolite carvings that some interpret as primitive lamps. But the Baghdad Battery stands apart because it isn't just art or speculation, it's a functional device, buried in the dirt of Mesopotamia, waiting for someone to connect the dots. Skeptics argue the jars might have held sacred scrolls, their metal components merely sealing the contents. but why the deliberate choice of dissimilar metals known to react in acid. Why the asphalt seal, perfect for insulating a liquid-filled cell, and why are there multiple jars, all with the same design? The simplest explanation might be the most astonishing. These were tools, not treasures. If the Baghdad Battery was indeed an ancient power source, it forces us to confront a humbling truth. Innovation isn't always linear. Sometimes breakthroughs flicker to life in forgotten corners of history, only to fade until rediscovered centuries later. The next time you charge your phone or flip a light switch, remember, the spark of that technology might have first crackled inside a clay jar 2,000 years ago, in the hands of someone who understood the invisible forces of the world far better than we ever guessed. The debate over the Baghdad Battery isn't just about whether it worked, it's about how it might have been used. Some scholars argue these jars were purely ceremonial, perhaps holding sacred scrolls with metal components meant to symbolize divine power. But the corrosion patterns tell a different story. When modern scientists recreated the battery using period-accurate materials, they found it could produce a steady current for weeks, perfect for delicate electroplating work. The Parthians were renowned for their intricate gold leaf artistry, and this could explain how they achieved such impossibly thin, even coatings on jewelry and statues, something nearly impossible with traditional heating methods alone. Then there's the ritual angle. Ancient temples often housed objects meant to inspire awe, and a weak electric current could have made statues tingle when touched, creating the illusion of divine presence. Imagine a priest handing a worshipper a gilded object that subtly vibrated in their hands, a trick that would have seemed like magic in 200 BCE. This theory gains traction when you consider similar artifacts, like the Egyptian dendera light carvings, which some believe depict archaic electrical devices. Were these technologies guarded secrets of the priesthood, used to cement their spiritual authority? The parallels to modern times are striking. Just as we use lithium-ion batteries to power everything from phones to electric cars, the Parthians might have harnessed electrochemistry for both art and spectacle. And like today, their knowledge wasn't universal. It was likely confined to elite craftsmen or temple scholars. That could explain why the technology vanished. Without widespread understanding, a single war or natural disaster could erase it from history. But the most provocative question isn't about the past, it's about the future. If ancient cultures grasped principles we assume were discovered much later, what does that say about the trajectory of innovation? Maybe progress isn't a straight line, but a spiral with ideas resurfacing across millennia. The Baghdad Battery challenges us to rethink not just history, but the very nature of discovery. After all, if a 2,000-year-old clay jar could hold the key to electroplating, what other forgotten breakthroughs might be waiting in the shadows of archaeology? In the year 673, a fleet of Arab warships descended upon Constantinople, confident in their overwhelming numbers. But as they closed in on the Byzantine capital, something unimaginable happened. Flames erupted from the enemy ships, not as arrows or catapulted fire, but as liquid jets that clung to wood and flesh, burning even on water. This was no ordinary weapon. This was Greek fire, a technological terror so potent it saved an empire and haunted its enemies for centuries. The exact recipe remains lost to history, but its legacy, and the chilling parallels to modern incendiary weapons, makes it one of antiquity's most frightening predictions of warfare's future. The secret of Greek fire wasn't just its destructive power, but its delivery. Byzantine ships mounted bronze tubes or siphons that could spray the substance in arcs over 100 feet like ancient flamethrowers. Historical accounts describe pumps pressurizing the mixture, while operators used handheld igniters to set the stream ablaze midair. The effect was psychological as much as physical. Imagine being a sailor watching a wall of fire race across the waves toward you, knowing it couldn't be doused with water. In fact, some texts suggest water only intensified the flames, hinting at ingredients like quicklime, which reacts violently with moisture. Other theories point to distilled petroleum, possibly mixed with resins or sulfur to thicken it into a napalm-like gel. What's striking is how closely Greek fire mirrors 20th century weapons. Napalm, developed during World War II, shares its adhesive, water-resistant qualities, while modern flamethrowers replicate the Byzantine siphon's devastating precision. The Byzantines even grasped principles of chemical warfare. Some accounts mention additives that released toxic fumes, foreshadowing the horrors of mustard gas. Yet, unlike today's industrialized weapons, Greek fire was artisanal, its formula allegedly known only to a single family who prepared it in secret workshops under imperial guard. The Byzantines protected the secret so fiercely that when an emperor's daughter defected to the enemy, she reportedly couldn't replicate it, leaving historians to puzzle over its ingredients for 1,000 years. The mystery deepens when you consider how advanced the chemistry might have been. Distilling crude oil into usable petroleum requires temperatures exceeding 700 degrees Fahrenheit, a process not officially perfected until the 19th century. But Byzantine alchemists could have achieved it using clay stills and underground ovens, techniques known to other ancient cultures. There's even evidence they experimented with pressurized delivery systems. One manuscript describes a handheld cherasiphon used by infantry, a precursor to the portable flamethrowers of World War I. Greek fire's true genius, though, lay in its tactical innovation. The Byzantines didn't just invent a weapon, they redesigned naval combat around it. Their Droman warships became floating fortresses with reinforced prows to ram enemies before unleashing fiery broadsides. Battles shifted from boarding actions to long-range infernos, a strategy that wouldn't resurface until the age of gunpowder. And like later superweapons, its power became a deterrent. Mere rumors of Greek fire could scatter fleets before a single flame was lit. Yet for all its sophistication, the technology vanished with the empire that perfected it. When Constantinople fell in 1453, the last custodians of the secret may have taken it to their graves. Modern attempts to recreate Greek fire have produced plausible versions, but none match the descriptions of a substance that burned underwater like dragon's breath. Perhaps that's for the best. In an era where a single spark could decide the fate of civilizations, some secrets are better left buried, not just as relics of the past, but as warnings of how easily fire, once harnessed, can outlive those who wield it. 2,000 years before steam engines powered the Industrial Revolution, a brilliant inventor in Roman Egypt built a device that could have rewritten history if only anyone had noticed. Hero of Alexandria, a 1st-century engineer and mathematician, crafted a marvel called the eolipile, a hollow metal sphere mounted on a boiler. When the water inside heated, steam shot through 2 bent tubes, causing the sphere to spin at dizzying speeds. This wasn't just a curiosity, it was the world's first recorded steam turbine, a working prototype of the technology that would later transform civilizations. Hero's design was deceptively simple. Imagine a copper globe balanced on an axle above a cauldron of boiling water. As steam rushed into the sphere and escaped through angled nozzles, the reactive force sent it whirling like a miniature planet in orbit. Modern reconstructions show it could reach speeds of over 1,500 rotations per minute, a staggering feat for an era without precision machining. What's shocking isn't just that Hero understood the principles of thrust and rotational energy, it's that he described it as a party trick, a wonder to amuse temple visitors, alongside his mechanical puppet shows and automatic door openers. The real tragedy lies in what could have been. Hero's manuscripts detail plans for steam-powered machinery that could have automated factories or propelled ships. He even hinted at using steam pressure to operate pistons, the very foundation of 18th-century engines. But in a world fueled by slave labor, there was no economic incentive to industrialize his inventions. The eolipile became a footnote, a clever toy gathering dust in the libraries of Alexandria, while humanity waited 17 more centuries to harness steam's full potential. Historians still debate why this breakthrough stalled. Some blame the Roman Empire's reliance on human toil. Others point to the loss of Hero's more advanced blueprints when the Great Library burned. But perhaps the most haunting explanation is the simplest. Innovation needs more than genius, it needs a society ready to listen. When James Watt perfected the steam engine in 1776, he stood on the shoulders of a forgotten giant whose name, like so many others, faded into the shadows of progress. Hero's legacy isn't just a lesson about lost technology. It's a reminder that the gap between invention and revolution isn't always about capability, sometimes it's about vision. The eolipile spins silently in history's background, a whisper of what might have been if the ancient world had recognized the power simmering in that copper sphere. Next time you hear a train whistle or feel the hum of a turbine, remember, the age of steam began not in a British workshop, but in the mind of an Egyptian thinker who saw fire and water and glimpsed the future. Hero of Alexandria didn't stop at steam power. His workshop brimmed with inventions that wouldn't feel out of place in a modern automation lab. Take his self-opening temple doors, a marvel of religious theater and engineering. Picture this: worshippers gather at an altar, and as they light the sacred fire, hidden mechanisms spring to life. Heat from the flames expands air in a bronze vessel, forcing water through pipes that act as counterweights. The temple doors swing open seemingly by divine will, stunning the crowd. It was the first known instance of automatic doors, a technology we now take for granted in supermarkets and airports, except Hero's version ran on thermodynamics, not motion sensors. Even more astonishing were his programmable carts. These wooden vehicles, equipped with ropes wound around rotating axles, could move in preset patterns like early robotic vehicles. By arranging knots and levers along the ropes, Hero created what amounted to mechanical code. Adjust the configuration, and the cart would trace circles, zigzags, or even pause before reversing direction. Modern engineers recognize this as a precursor to punch card programming, the same principle used in 19th century looms and early computers. That a first-century inventor grasped the concept of programmable movement is nothing short of revolutionary. Then there's his vending machine. Yes, the concept of coin-operated devices existed 2,000 years ago. Hero's design dispensed holy water in exchange for a drachma. Drop the coin onto a lever, and its weight would temporarily open a valve, releasing a precise amount of liquid before the mechanism reset. Temples used it to prevent overuse of sacred water, but the implications were staggering. This wasn't just a clever gadget, it was the birth of self-service commerce, a direct ancestor of today's vending machines and even pay-per-use technology. What ties these inventions together is Hero's understanding of feedback systems, a cornerstone of modern robotics. His devices didn't just move, they responded. Fire triggered doors, coins regulated water flow, ropes dictated paths, while his contemporaries saw mechanics as tools for labor or war. Hero envisioned a world where machines could interact with their environment autonomously. The tragedy is that these breakthroughs were relegated to parlor tricks and temple wonders. Had Hero's automatic carts been scaled up, they might have inspired self-propelled carriages centuries before the locomotive. Had his feedback systems been applied to industry, the concept of automation could have reshaped ancient economies. Instead, like so many flashes of genius in antiquity, they were admired then forgotten. Yet in a way, Hero's legacy did survive. The same principles that powered his temple doors now regulate smart thermostats. His programmable carts echo in today's robotic vacuum cleaners. And every time you insert coins into a parking meter, you're participating in a ritual he invented for Templar-goers 2 millennia ago. The difference. We recognize these technologies as revolutionary. Hero's world simply wasn't ready to see the future staring back at it, one ingenious invention at a time. High in the jungles of Central America, the Maya built towering observatories not with lenses or satellites, but with naked eye precision and stone-carved mathematics. While Europe languished in the Dark Ages, Mayan astronomers tracked the cosmos with such accuracy that their eclipse predictions, carved into stelae centuries in advance, deviated by mere hours from modern astronomical calculations. Their secret, a fusion of relentless observation and a numerical system that included the concept of zero, a breakthrough most civilizations wouldn't grasp for another 1,000 years. Take the famous Dresden Codex, a bark paper book surviving from the 11th century. Within its intricate glyphs lies a table predicting solar eclipses with stunning detail, calculating the moon's movements to pinpoint when its shadow would cross the Earth. Modern researchers comparing these predictions to NASA eclipse catalogs found discrepancies of less than a day, an achievement unthinkable without telescopes or computers. But the Maya didn't just predict eclipses, they mapped Venus's 584-day cycle with a margin of error of just 2 hours per century, recognizing its dual appearances as both morning and evening star. At the heart of their precision was the long count calendar, a masterpiece of cyclical timekeeping. Unlike our linear Gregorian calendar, the Maya wove together multiple interlocking cycles, the 260-day Tzolk'in for rituals, the 365-day Hob for agriculture, and the grand long count tracking vast epochs. Their calculations accounted for celestial drift with adjustments eerily similar to our leap years, proving they understood Earth's orbit wasn't perfectly symmetrical. The most mind-bending feat, their ability to sync these cycles, the calendar round, a 52-year span where the Tzolk'in and Hob realigned, served as a cosmic reset button, ensuring their predictions stayed accurate across generations. What's often overlooked is how they achieved this without metal tools or written records of their methods. Archaeologists believe they used simple crossed sticks to measure star angles and water-filled chambers to reflect the night sky, proof that innovation thrives under constraints. At Capon's Temple of the Inscriptions, a narrow shaft aligns with the setting sun only on the equinoxes, flooding the interior with golden light. At Chichén Itzá, the serpent shadow slithering down El Castillo's steps during solstices reveals their obsession with celestial rhythms. Yet the greatest mystery isn't their accuracy, it's their urgency. Why did a civilization without space travel need such precise astronomy? The answer lies in their worldview. Time wasn't linear but layered, with celestial events signaling divine messages. A misplaced eclipse prediction could mean misreading the gods' will, with consequences for harvests or wars. This spiritual drive fueled their scientific rigor, blurring the line between priest and astronomer. When the long count's end date of December 21, 2012 sparked global doomsday fears, it ironically highlighted how misunderstood their system was. The Maya never predicted catastrophe. They saw time as infinite, their calendar simply rolling over like an odometer. In an age where we rely on atomic clocks and GPS, their legacy endures as a humbling reminder. You don't need silicon chips to touch the stars, just patience, curiosity, and the wisdom to look up. Beneath the stepped pyramids of Palenque, deep in the humid jungles of Chiapas, lies a stone artifact that has fueled debates for decades, the intricately carved lid of King Pakul's sarcophagus. Discovered in 1952 by archaeologist Alberto Roslulia, this 7-ton slab of limestone depicts the Mayan ruler in a pose unlike any other royal burial art. His body leans backward, hands manipulating unseen controls, while what appears to be flames or plumes of smoke engulf his feet. Above him, a complex array of celestial symbols and serpentine forms twist into something resembling machinery. To some, this is simply mythological imagery. To others, it's undeniable proof that the Maya envisioned, or perhaps even witnessed, technology resembling modern spacecraft. The ancient astronaut interpretation hinges on uncanny details. Pachel's posture mirrors that of a 20th century astronaut reclining in a capsule, his fingers flexed as if adjusting instruments. The flames beneath him could be rocket exhaust, while the twisting elements overhead resemble stylized propulsion systems or even control panels. Swiss author Erich von Däniken popularized this view in his 1968 book Chariots of the Gods, arguing that the carving was evidence of extraterrestrial contact. Mainstream archaeologists vehemently disagree, pointing to Mayan cosmology. In their view, the scene shows Pachel descending into the underworld along the World Tree, a sacred axis connecting earth, sky, and the realm of the dead. The flames are likely stylized serpent tails or streams of blood, common symbols of royal rebirth. But here's where it gets fascinating. Even if we dismiss the astronaut theory, the sarcophagus lid still reveals the Maya's staggering grasp of motion and mechanics. The swirling elements surrounding Pachel don't just depict static mythology, they convey dynamic energy, almost like a diagram of forces. Some researchers note similarities to the double helix structure of DNA, while others see parallels to the vibrations of quantum physics. Whether intentional or not, the carving encodes a vision of movement through space that feels eerily prescient. What's often overlooked is the lid's mathematical precision. The entire composition aligns with Mayan calendrical cycles, its symbols arranged to reflect Pachel's journey through cosmic time. The machine-like elements may actually represent celestial bodies plotted along orbital paths, a kind of stone blueprint of the heavens. Modern software analyzing the carving's proportions has found ratios matching planetary movements, suggesting the Maya might have been mapping more than just mythology. The debate ultimately circles back to perspective. To eyes shaped by the space age, Pachel's pose screams countdown to liftoff. But to the Maya, it might have symbolized the ultimate voyage, the soul's passage through the cosmos. Perhaps both interpretations hold truth. After all, their astronomers tracked Venus with supercomputer accuracy. Who's to say they didn't imagine or even dream of vessels that could ride those celestial currents? The Palinque lid endures as a riddle carved in stone, challenging us to wonder where the line between ancient myth and modern science truly lies. One thing is certain, whether depicting a king's descent into Xibalba or humanity's ascent to the stars, the artifact proves the Maya thought in scales of space and time that still leave us humbled. In a civilization that measured epochs down to the hour, maybe the idea of interstellar travel wasn't so much a prediction as it was an inevitability. Ancient Sanskrit texts tell of vast skies crisscrossed by luminous chariots not pulled by horses, but powered by some unseen force, capable of soaring between continents in mere hours. These weren't myths scribbled in the margins, they were meticulous manuals. The Vaimanika Shastra, a text attributed to the sage Maharshi Bharadwaj, describes Vimanas flying machines with elaborate propulsion systems, energy shields, and even weapons that sound unsettlingly familiar to modern aerospace technology. One passage details a mercury vortex engine, a concept that mirrors contemporary ion propulsion experiments. Another mentions Dundonatha, a material that could render the craft invisible, an eerie parallel to today's stealth technology research. But the Vaimanika Shastra isn't alone. The Mahabharata, written over 2,000 years ago, recounts aerial battles where Vimanas unleashed projectiles that could burn down entire cities, leaving survivors with symptoms chillingly similar to radiation poisoning. The Ramayana describes a Pushpaka Vimana large enough to carry entire armies, its navigation so precise it could follow predetermined flight paths without deviation. These accounts aren't vague poetic metaphors, they're technical, almost clinical in their detail. When the text describes a Vimana's cockpit instruments for measuring altitude, wind speed, and even celestial coordinates, it's hard to dismiss them as pure fantasy. Skeptics argue these descriptions are allegorical or later additions, but the consistency across texts is striking. The Samrangana Sutradhara, an 11th century treatise on architecture, dedicates an entire chapter to Vimana construction, specifying alloys of light metals, energy-absorbing cushions for pilots, and even emergency protocols for mid-air malfunctions. One passage warns against flying during eclipses due to invisible atmospheric disturbances, a precaution that aligns with modern knowledge of gravitational and electromagnetic anomalies during such events. The real controversy erupts when you compare these texts to modern UFO sightings. Witnesses describe disc-shaped crafts with humming vibrations, just like the Antariksha yantras mentioned in the Vaimanika Shastra. The infamous tic-tac UFOs tracked by the U.S. Navy, capable of sudden stops and 90-degree turns, mirror the Vimanas said to hover motionless or dart like dragonflies. Even the ancient accounts of celestial battles find echoes in contemporary reports of UFOs disabling missiles or nuclear facilities. But here's the twist. Ancient Indian scholars might not have needed extraterrestrial inspiration to envision these technologies. The Vaisheshika Sutra, a 2,000-year-old text on physics, discusses motion, inertia, and atomic theory with startling acuity. Could Vimanas represent not alien gifts but a lost branch of indigenous science? Archaeologists have uncovered unusually refined alloys in Indus Valley sites, and Tamil Nadu's Siddhar tradition speaks of alchemical processes to purify metals for flight. Perhaps these texts preserve fragments of an advanced material science we're only now rediscovering. The debate over Vimanas forces us to confront an uncomfortable question. If ancient cultures could imagine or even build machines that resemble modern aircraft, what does that say about the linearity of progress? Maybe the skies of antiquity weren't as empty as we assume, or maybe the human mind, when unshackled by preconceptions, can intuit truth centuries ahead of their time. Either way, the Vimanas linger in our collective imagination, not as relics of superstition, but as silent challenges to the boundaries of history and possibility. For nearly 2,000 years, the Roman Pantheon has stood intact, its massive dome, still the world's largest unreinforced concrete structure, defying earthquakes, wars, and the relentless passage of time. Meanwhile, modern bridges and highways crumble after just decades. The secret, ancient Roman concrete wasn't just durable, it had a remarkable ability to heal itself. Recent breakthroughs in material science have uncovered why tiny, mysterious white chunks embedded in the concrete, long dismissed as sloppy mixing or poor quality control, are actually the key to its immortality. These white inclusions, called limeclasts, were once thought to be evidence of inconsistent Roman craftsmanship. But when researchers at MIT and Harvard examined samples under high-resolution microscopes, they discovered something astonishing. The clasts were reservoirs of reactive calcium oxide, essentially pockets of raw potential. When cracks formed and water seeped in, these clasts dissolved, releasing a flood of calcium-rich minerals that filled the gaps and crystallized, effectively gluing the concrete back together. It's a process eerily similar to how human bones heal after a fracture, only this metabolism happens silently within stone. What's even more impressive is how Romans engineered this self-repair system. Modern concrete uses fully dissolved lime, creating a uniform but brittle matrix. Roman builders, however, deliberately mixed in chunks of quicklime, a caustic, unstable substance, knowing it would create these reactive hotspots. Writings from Vitruvius, the famed Roman architect, hint at the technique. His recipes call for hot mixing materials, a volatile process that modern engineers initially considered reckless. Now we realize it was genius. The heat from the reaction created a porous, nano-structured concrete that absorbed stress rather than resisting it rigidly, while the limeclast stood guard for centuries, ready to mend any damage. Today, scientists are racing to replicate this ancient technology. The implications are staggering. Imagine seawalls that repair their own erosion, or underground pipelines that seal leaks without human intervention. Teams have already created prototypes using Roman-inspired, lime-classed formulas, with early tests showing cracks healing in weeks. Some researchers are even experimenting with bacterial spores that mimic the process, embedding them in concrete to secrete calcite when exposed to water. But here's the twist: Roman concrete's longevity isn't just about chemistry, it's about philosophy. Where modern construction prioritizes speed and cost, Roman engineers built for eternity. Their concrete was slower to set, more labor-intensive, and required scarce volcanic ash from Pompeii. Yet 2 millennia later, their harbors still resist seawater corrosion, while our steel-reinforced counterparts rust away in decades. The lesson isn't just about a recipe, it's about rethinking sustainability. In an age of disposable infrastructure, the Pantheon whispers a challenge. Maybe the future of building isn't in inventing something new, but in remembering what we've forgotten. As climate change threatens coastal cities and repair budgets balloon, Roman concrete offers more than historical curiosity. It's a blueprint for resilience. Those white flecks in the stone aren't flaws. They're a message written in calcium and time. Sometimes progress means looking backward. In the year 138, a hollow bronze vessel in China's imperial court suddenly clattered to life. One of 8 sculpted dragons perched on its surface dropped a metal ball into the waiting mouth of a corresponding toad below. To the courtiers, it might have seemed like a curious mechanical quirk, but to the inventor Zhang Heng, it was a monumental achievement. The world's first seismoscope had just detected an earthquake hundreds of miles away. Days later, messengers arrived with reports of tremors in that exact direction. No cracks in the earth, no fleeing animals, just an elegant bronze instrument, silently predicting disaster before it could be felt. This wasn't magic, it was precision engineering. Zhang Heng's device, crafted during the Han Dynasty, stood over 6 feet tall and resembled an ornate wine jar. Inside, however, lay an ingenious pendulum system. When seismic waves rippled through the ground, the pendulum would sway, tripping a lever that released one of the dragon's balls. The direction of the fall pointed toward the quake's epicenter, while the force of the drop hinted at its intensity. Modern recreations suggest it could detect quakes up to 400 miles away, a range that rivals some early 20th century seismographs. The real brilliance lies in what we still don't fully understand. No original survives, and scholars debate how the inner mechanism worked without modern materials. Some theories propose a system of weighted arms or even floating needles responding to subterranean vibrations. What's undeniable is its sophistication. Zhang Heng's design accounts for the fact that earthquakes send multiple types of waves, the faster P waves triggering the pendulum, while the more destructive S waves arrive later. This distinction wouldn't be formally recognized until the 1900s, but the seismoscope wasn't just a scientific marvel, it was a bureaucratic one. In an empire where earthquakes were seen as heavenly rebukes, accurate predictions let officials dispatch aid or suppress rebellions before chaos spread. The device's theatricality also mattered. The clattering bronze made disbelief impossible. When naysayers accused Zhang Heng of fraud, he reportedly staged a demonstration triggering one dragon's release without an earthquake by secretly shaking the mechanism from afar. The court gasped. Technology, he proved, could outshine superstition. Today, Japan's earthquake early warning system uses the same principle Zhang Heng pioneered, detecting initial tremors to alert cities before the worst hits. The difference: his device needed no electricity, no satellites, just gravity and bronze. As we spend millions on fiber optic sensors and AI predictions, a 2,000-year-old artifact whispers a reminder. Sometimes the most advanced solutions are also the simplest. Zhang Heng's dragons didn't just guard an empire, they foreshadowed a world where disasters don't surprise us, but obey the laws of physics we've learned to read. Deep within the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, etched onto a shadowy chamber wall, lies a series of enigmatic carvings that have ignited fierce debate for over a century. The so-called dendera light bulbs depict strange, elongated objects resembling oversized glass bulbs, each containing a sinuous filament that terminates in what appears to be a lotus flower. Emerging from the base of these objects are cables or ropes held taut by figures who grip them like technicians tending to some ancient power source. To some, these carvings are undeniable proof that the Egyptians harnessed electricity thousands of years before Volta and Edison. To archaeologists, there's something far more symbolic yet equally fascinating. Mainstream Egyptology offers a compelling alternative interpretation. The bulbs likely represent the blossoming of a serpent from a lotus flower, a sacred motif tied to creation myths. The filament mirrors the undulating form of Wadjet, the serpent goddess, while the cables resemble the ropes used in ceremonial rituals. The entire scene aligns with the Osirian mythos, where the god Osiris's resurrection was symbolized by the serpent's regenerative shedding of skin. Even the positioning within the crypt, a space dedicated to cyclical rebirth, supports this reading. The dim, flickering torchlight of the chamber would have made the carvings appear to writhe with life, reinforcing their spiritual significance. Yet the electricity theory persists because of tantalizing details. The bulbs bear an uncanny resemblance to Crookes tubes, early experimental light bulbs from the 19th century. The filament follows a precise helical path, unlike the random coils of serpent art found elsewhere in Egyptian temples. And then there's the Baghdad Battery. Could the Egyptians have paired such devices with these lamps to create illumination? Proponents point to the absence of soot in certain underground chambers where torches would have been impractical, suggesting an alternative light source. The truth may lie in a middle ground. While no physical evidence of Egyptian electrical technology has been found, their mastery of chemistry and metallurgy was extraordinary. The famous blue lotus ointment, when mixed with certain salts, can produce bioluminescent effects. Could the carvings depict not literal light bulbs, but a forgotten electroluminescent ritual? Or perhaps they're schematic diagrams of some metaphysical inner light described in initiation rites. What's undeniable is that the dendera carvings challenge our assumptions. Whether showing sacred serpents or lost technology, they remind us that ancient minds perceived energy both divine and earthly in ways we're still unraveling. The dendera lights endure not as a solved puzzle but as a mirror. They reflect our own era's obsessions back at us. When we see filaments and wires, it says as much about our technological worldview as it does about the Egyptians. Maybe that's their real lesson. Every generation rediscovers the past through the lens of its present. And sometimes the most electrifying revelations aren't about what the ancients knew, but how we choose to see them. Viking ships didn't just conquer stormy seas, they outsmarted them. While other sailors huddled near shore, terrified of losing the sun's guidance, Norse navigators ventured into the foggiest waters with a secret weapon, the solarstein or sunstone. This wasn't some mystical talisman, it was a precision tool, possibly made from calcite or cordierite crystals, that could pinpoint the sun's location even through thick clouds. Modern experiments confirm what Viking sagas hinted at. These stones acted like nature's GPS, filtering polarized light to reveal the hidden sun's position with eerie accuracy. Here's how it worked. When sunlight passes through Earth's atmosphere, it scatters, creating subtle patterns of polarized light invisible to the naked eye. But certain crystals, like Iceland spar, a form of calcite, have a unique property. They split light into twin beams. By rotating the stone until these beams match in brightness, navigators could trace a line to the sun's position, even at twilight or during overcast skies. A study in Proceedings of the Royal Society proved the method's effectiveness using a replica sunstone. Researchers plotted courses within 5 degrees of the actual sun's location under cloud cover. The genius of this system: no batteries, no moving parts, just physics and observation. Viking navigators likely combined the sunstone with other techniques, like tracking wave patterns and bird behavior, but the stone offered something irreplaceable: certainty when the skies went blank. Imagine standing on a longship's deck, the horizon swallowed by fog, holding a crystal that whispered where the sun hid. It's no wonder Norse sagas describe kings consulting the sunstone during starless days, a detail once dismissed as poetic exaggeration until archaeologists unearthed an Iceland spar crystal aboard a 16th century shipwreck, just inches from a navigation compass. What's haunting is how close this ancient tech mirrors modern tools. Today's pilots use polarized filters in cockpit instruments to maintain orientation in low visibility. Bees navigate by reading polarized light patterns, a trick biologists only decoded in the 1940s. The Vikings didn't just stumble upon a clever trick, they harnessed a fundamental property of light that would elude scientists for centuries. Yet the sunstone's legacy isn't just about navigation, it's about rethinking how we define innovation. In an age obsessed with silicon and software, the Vikings remind us that some breakthroughs aren't forged in labs but lie waiting in the earth, asking only for a keen eye to unlock them. Their sunstone didn't predict the future, it revealed a truth that was always there, hidden in the light. The siege of Syracuse in 212 BC should have been a swift victory for Rome's mighty fleet. But as their wooden warships closed in on the Sicilian coastline, something unimaginable happened. Blinding flashes of light erupted from the city's walls, followed by plumes of smoke as ship after ship mysteriously burst into flames. Ancient historians like Lucian and Galen describe the terror of this moment, crediting the destruction to a single invention: Archimedes' death ray. According to legend, the Greek mathematician had devised a weapon so advanced it could harness the sun itself, using polished bronze shields or mirrors to focus sunlight into a lethal beam capable of igniting enemy vessels hundreds of feet away. For centuries, scholars dismissed the death ray as myth, a fanciful exaggeration of conventional fire arrows or catapults. But in 2005, engineers from MIT decided to put the legend to the test. They arranged 127 mirrored panels, each about the size of a classroom whiteboard, aiming them at a mock-up of a Roman ship's hull. The result: flames erupted in just 10 seconds. A similar experiment by the TV show Mythbusters initially failed, but when they adjusted for the likely use of highly polished bronze mirrors in Archimedes' time, more reflective than modern glass, they too produced charring and ignition. The science checks out. Parabolic mirrors can concentrate sunlight to over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than most wooden ships' ignition point. What makes the death ray plausible isn't just the physics, it's Archimedes' other proven inventions. The same mind that engineered the screw pump and compound pulley systems was obsessed with optics. His lost treatise on burning mirrors supposedly detailed how curved reflectors could focus light, and his work on parabolic geometry suggests he understood the principles needed to build such a device. Syracuse's geography also played a role. The siege occurred in summer when the Mediterranean sun sits near its zenith, and the city's high walls would have provided the ideal elevation to angle mirrors downward at approaching ships. Yet skeptics raise valid counterpoints. No archaeological evidence of large mirrors has been found in Syracuse, and ancient accounts conflict on whether the weapon used a single massive reflector or an array of smaller ones. There's also the challenge of coordination. Keeping dozens of mirrors trained on a moving target during battle would require precise communication, something easier to achieve in a controlled modern experiment than amid the chaos of war. Perhaps the truth lies in the middle. Rather than a single death ray, Archimedes might have deployed multiple smaller mirrors as psychological weapons. Even if they didn't guarantee destruction, the sight of sunlight flashing ominously from Syracuse's ramparts could have panicked Roman crews into disarray. After all, the same mathematician also designed colossal cranes to flip invading ships. Psychological warfare was clearly part of his strategy. the death ray's legacy endures not just as a historical curiosity, but as a testament to humanity's relentless ingenuity in the face of conflict. Today, the U.S. military researches similar directed energy weapons like laser defense systems that can intercept missiles. Archimedes' brilliance wasn't just in predicting future technology, it was in seeing the potential of fundamental physics, whether applied to lifting water or bending light to his will. His death ray blurs the line between legend and proto-science, reminding us that some of history's most outlandish tales might just be waiting for the right evidence or the right experiment to catch fire. High in the Andes, where the earth shudders and the mountains themselves seem to tremble, the Inca built cities that defied time and tectonics. At Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, and Ollantaytambo, their stone walls stand unshaken after centuries of earthquakes that have flattened modern buildings mere miles away. The secret lies in stones that fit together so precisely, not even a blade of grass can slip between them, yet these aren't rigid blocks locked in place. They're a masterclass in controlled movement, an ancient answer to a problem modern engineers still grapple with: how to make structures dance with the earth rather than fight it. Take Sacsayhuaman's zigzagging ramparts, where some stones weigh over 100 tons. Instead of mortar, the Inca used gravity and geometry. Each boulder was painstakingly shaped to interlock with its neighbors like a three-dimensional puzzle, with tapered edges and slight convexities that allowed micro-movements during tremors. When seismic waves ripple through the ground, these walls don't resist, they flex, the stones shifting millimeters apart before settling back into perfect alignment. Modern engineers call this elastic deformation, a principle now embedded in everything from Tokyo's skyscrapers to San Francisco's retrofitted bridges. But the Inca perfected it 600 years ago without computers or calculus, using only stone hammers and observational genius. What's even more remarkable is how they scaled this technique. At Machu Picchu, terraces and temples feature polygonal stones with as many as 32 angles, each carved to distribute stress across multiple contact points. Unlike rectangular blocks that concentrate force at weak corners, these irregular shapes create a web of support, ensuring no single point bears catastrophic pressure. Contemporary seismic simulations show these walls absorbing up to 50% more energy than conventional masonry before showing strain, a revelation that's inspired architects from Lima to Los Angeles to adopt Inca-inspired designs for earthquake-prone regions. The true stroke of brilliance, though, lies in the gaps. Inca walls look seamless, but their stones aren't actually touching flush. Microscopic analysis reveals hairline spaces filled with fine gravel, a natural shock absorber that dampens vibrations. It's the same principle behind base isolators in modern hospitals and nuclear plants, where rubber pads separate buildings from shaking foundations. The Inca version was cruder but equally effective. Their gravel joints scattered seismic energy like pebbles breaking a wave's force. Today's builders are catching up. After the 2007 Peru earthquake demolished concrete homes near Cusco, engineers noticed adjacent Inca walls hadn't even cracked. Now, projects like LEAM, as earthquake-resistant schools, use fiber-reinforced concrete blocks designed to mimic Inca patterns, with interlocking lobes and strategic voids. Japanese researchers, whose own ancestors developed flexible wood joints for pagodas, have collaborated with Peruvian masons to revive these techniques, blending them with steel frames for hybrid resilience. The lesson isn't just about stones, it's about humility. For decades, Western engineers dismissed Inca construction as quaint before physics proved its superiority. Now we see their walls not as primitive but as peerless, a reminder that sometimes the most advanced solutions were the patina of centuries. As climate change intensifies seismic activity worldwide, these ancient blueprints offer more than history, they offer hope. After all, if a civilization without the wheel could outbuild our concrete jungles, maybe we've been measuring progress upside down all along. Long before the word robot entered our vocabulary, the workshops of ancient Greece hummed with mechanical marvels that would seem almost magical even today. Picture this, a theater where tiny automated actors performed entire plays, moving across miniature stages as if guided by invisible hands, or a silver owl that could pivot its head, flap its wings, and even hoot, crafted not for children's amusement but to dazzle royalty. These weren't myths or exaggerated legends. They were the work of engineers like Philo of Byzantium and Hero of Alexandria, whose automata blurred the line between invention and artistry, foreshadowing modern robotics by over 2,000 years. One of the most astonishing examples was Philo's mechanical servant, a life-sized figure that could pour wine into a cup when a visitor placed it in its hand. Powered by a hidden system of counterweights, levers, and air pressure, this automaton wasn't just a party trick, it was a prototype for interactive machines. The secret lay in its intricate valve system, which responded to the weight of the cup, triggering a sequence of movements that mimicked human actions. Sound familiar? It's the same basic principle behind today's touch-sensitive vending machines or even the robotic arms used in manufacturing. But the Greeks didn't stop at servants. Hero's singing bird, perched atop a hollow tube, would chirp melodiously when water flowed through its base, a feat achieved using air compression and whistles, much like the workings of a modern pipe organ. Even more impressive was his programmable cart, which could change direction based on winding ropes and knots, effectively a mechanical precursor to binary code. These inventions weren't just novelties, they were experiments in mimicking life itself, exploring how far mechanics could replicate the organic world. What's haunting is how these creations parallel today's debates about artificial intelligence. The Greeks called automata ta automata, meaning things that act on their own, a phrase that echoes our modern fascination with autonomy in machines. Philosophers like Aristotle pondered whether these devices had a form of soul, eerily foreshadowing contemporary discussions about machine consciousness. And just as we worry about AI's ethical implications, the Greeks embedded their automata with moral lessons. One famous mechanical play showed Narcissus falling in love with his own reflection, a warning about vanity that feels startlingly relevant in our age of social media algorithms. Yet for all their ingenuity, these inventions were often dismissed as mere toys for the elite. The knowledge required to build them, precision gear cutting, fluid dynamics, even early programming wasn't preserved in the way geometry or philosophy was. When Rome's conquest shifted focus from innovation to empire, the blueprints for these mechanical wonders faded into obscurity. Fragments survived in Arabic translations, later inspiring medieval clockmakers and Renaissance engineers, but the original spark was lost. Today, as we stand on the brink of an AI revolution, the legacy of these ancient automatons takes on new weight. They remind us that the desire to create lifelike machines isn't a modern obsession, it's a thread woven deep into human history. The difference now is that we have the tools to turn those ancient dreams into reality. When a roboticist programs a drone to swarm like starlings or a chatbot to mimic human conversation, they're walking the same path Philo and Hero carved in bronze and steam. The Greeks may not have had microchips, but their understanding of cause and effect, of motion and mimicry, laid the groundwork for every robot that now walks, talks, or thinks among us. So the next time you ask a smart speaker for the weather or watch a factory robot assemble a car, remember, the seeds of that technology were planted in a world where water, weights, and whispers of air made metal sing and statues serve. The ancient Greeks didn't just predict the future of automation, they built its first rough draft, one gear at a time. Buried beneath the sands of ancient Mesopotamia, clay tablets etched with cryptic symbols reveal a mathematical sophistication that defies time. These Babylonian astronomical records, dating back to between 350 and 50 BC, don't just track the stars, They predict Jupiter's movements using methods so advanced, historians initially refused to believe they predated European calculus by 15 centuries. The key lies in a series of tablets now known as Text M, where Babylonian scribes calculated Jupiter's position not with simple arithmetic, but with a geometric technique that mirrors the foundational principles of integral calculus. At first glance, the cuneiform markings look like nothing more than columns of numbers until you decode their logic. The Babylonians broke Jupiter's 60-day apparent motion across the sky into smaller segments, plotting its speed against time in a way that formed trapezoidal shapes under a curve. Sound familiar? It's eerily similar to how modern calculus calculates areas under curves to determine rates of change. But here's the twist. While 17th century giants like Newton and Leibniz developed calculus to describe continuous motion, the Babylonians focused on discrete snapshots of Jupiter's path, achieving comparable precision through sheer numerical ingenuity. What's even more astonishing is how they applied this. One tablet traces Jupiter's first 120 days of movement, dividing the planet's apparent slowdown into 4 phases. For each phase, they calculated the area of a trapezoid representing distance traveled, effectively finding the integral of velocity over time. The results matched Jupiter's actual position with an error margin of less than 2%. Modern astrophysicists recreating their methods were stunned. Without telescopes or even a heliocentric model of the solar system, the Babylonians had unlocked a mathematical shortcut to celestial mechanics. But why Jupiter? To these ancient sky watchers, the planet represented Marduk, king of their gods. Predicting its motions wasn't just science, it was divine diplomacy, a way to align earthly power with cosmic will. Temple astronomers likely used these calculations to schedule rituals or legitimize rulers, turning celestial patterns into political tools. Yet the tablets show no interest in why Jupiter moved as it did, only in mastering its rhythm through relentless computation. The real mystery is how this knowledge vanished. Greek astronomers like Hipparchus borrowed Babylonian data but seemingly missed their calculus-like methods. By the time Europe's scientific revolution began, these tablets had lain buried for millennia. Historians speculate that the Babylonian approach, rooted in practical problem-solving rather than abstract theory, might have been too alien for later thinkers steeped in philosophical traditions. Or perhaps the fragility of clay versus parchment doomed their legacy to obscurity. Today, the echoes of their work persist in unexpected places. NASA's trajectory calculations for space probes use similar, discrete step methods when modeling gravitational assists. Financial analysts modeling stock market fluctuations sometimes employ trapezoidal approximations akin to those on Text M. The Babylonians remind us that breakthrough ideas often wear disguises. Their calculus wasn't framed in equations but in the language of trapezoids and timekeeping, a testament to how necessity shapes innovation. What they achieved with nothing more than wet clay and a stylus challenges the very narrative of scientific progress. It wasn't Europe's ivory towers that first quantified the heavens' dance, it was bureaucrats in mud brick temples, turning the sky into a spreadsheet 2,000 years before the word science even existed. Their legacy whispers a humbling truth. Sometimes genius isn't about inventing something new, but recognizing the patterns hidden in plain sight. In the scorching deserts of ancient Persia, where midday temperatures could melt stone, engineers crafted a solution to the heat so elegant it puts modern air conditioning to shame. These weren't machines humming with electricity, they were towering structures of clay and brick called wind catchers, designed to harness the slightest breeze and transform it into a cooling current. Picture a slender chimney rising above a home's roof, its top split into multiple openings facing the prevailing winds. As hot air rushed in, it would funnel downward, passing over subterranean pools of water or cool stone surfaces, shedding its heat before spilling into living spaces as a refreshing draft. The result, interior temperatures up to 40 degrees cooler than the outside, all without a single watt of power. The genius of wind catchers lay in their adaptability. Some versions, like the Badgers of Yazd, could even reverse airflow at night, drawing cool desert air downward while expelling trapped heat. Others incorporated qanats, ancient underground aqueducts, to channel moisture into the system, creating a primitive but effective form of evaporative cooling. The effect was so reliable that Persian architects positioned wind catchers above ice storage pits, keeping ice solid through sweltering summers centuries before refrigeration existed. Modern engineers studying these structures have found their efficiency rivals 20th century HVAC systems, with airflow rates precisely calibrated to room sizes and wind patterns. What's astonishing is how closely these ancient designs mirror today's sustainable architecture. The principles behind wind catchers' passive ventilation, thermal mass, and evaporative cooling are now cornerstones of green building. Dubai's Masdar City and Arizona's Biosphere 2 have incorporated updated versions, while researchers at the University of Tehran have modeled windcatcher-enhanced buildings that slash energy use by 70%. Even the term windcatcher has re-entered the lexicon, rebranded as natural ventilation towers in contemporary design manuals. Yet the Persians weren't just ahead of their time. They understood something modern cooling systems often ignore: harmony with the environment. Wind catchers worked with desert climates, not against them, using materials like mud brick that absorbed moisture and released it slowly to regulate humidity. Compare that to today's sealed glass towers, where relentless AC battles external heat, consuming staggering amounts of energy. The ancient approach held a quiet wisdom: sometimes the most advanced solution isn't to overpower nature, but to listen to it. Now, as climate change forces a reckoning with energy waste, wind catchers are experiencing a revival. Architects from Morocco to Mexico are blending their timeless principles with modern materials, creating hybrid systems that need minimal backup cooling. In Iran, restored 17th century homes with functioning wind catchers now draw tourists eager to experience their natural chill. The lesson here isn't just about engineering, it's about rethinking progress. A technology invented over 2,000 years ago might hold the key to cooling our overheating world, not with louder machines, but with smarter design. The Persians didn't predict the future, they built it, one breath of wind at a time. For tens of thousands of years across the vast and unforgiving landscapes of Australia, Aboriginal cultures maintained something far more precise than any map: something alive. These weren't charts etched on parchment or carved into stone, but stories woven into song, dance, and art. Known as songlines or dreaming tracks, these intricate oral traditions encoded the entirety of the continent's geography, ecology, and even astronomy into rhythmic narratives passed down through generations. Imagine a highway system made not of asphalt but of melody, where every turn, every waterhole, every mountain was a verse in an unbroken song stretching thousands of miles. At the heart of this system was an understanding of space and time so nuanced it puts modern navigation to shame. A single songline could guide a traveler from the tropical waters of Arnhem Land to the red deserts of Central Australia, mentioning specific rock formations, seasonal plants, and celestial markers along the way. The lyrics weren't just poetry, they were hyper-accurate mnemonic devices. The cadence of the song matched the rhythm of walking, with each musical phrase corresponding to the distance between landmarks. Sing the wrong verse too soon, and you'd know you'd veered off course. The melody itself became a compass. What's truly staggering is how these songlines integrated astronomy. Certain tracks aligned with the movements of stars, their verses shifting with the seasons to reflect celestial changes. The emu in the sky constellation, for example, wasn't just a myth. It signaled when to harvest emu eggs, its position in the Milky Way mirroring the posture of real emus nesting on the ground below. Other songlines trace the paths of ancestral beings who, according to lore, had walked across the land while simultaneously imprinting their journeys in the stars above. This dual-layer navigation, earth and sky intertwined, created a living, breathing GPS that required no batteries, no satellites, just memory and attention. Modern researchers comparing songlines to topographic maps have found them astonishingly accurate. In one documented case, an elder recited a songline for a stretch of land he'd never physically visited, yet his description of springs and rock formations matched satellite imagery with near-perfect precision. European settlers, oblivious to this sophisticated system, often mistook Aboriginal guides' reliance on song as primitive superstition. They didn't realize these singers were consulting what amounted to an ancient, decentralized Wikipedia, a crowdsourced database of survival knowledge refined over 60,000 years. The genius of songlines lies in their resilience. Unlike paper maps that fray or digital files that corrupt, these oral maps self-corrected through community. If someone misremembered a verse, others would correct it during gatherings, ensuring the knowledge stayed sharp. Landmarks weren't just waypoints, they were memory triggers, each with its own story reinforcing the route. A peculiar shaped tree might anchor a verse about water sources, while a specific rock's shadow at noon could encode a warning about summer heat. Today, as we fumble with smartphones losing signal in the wilderness, songlines offer a humbling lesson in sustainable technology. NASA has even studied them as a model for long-duration spaceflight navigation, where traditional maps may fail. But perhaps their greatest gift is the way they redefine what we consider advanced. In a world obsessed with hardware and bandwidth, the Aboriginal peoples mastered a system where culture, ecology, and navigation were inseparable. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful technologies aren't built from silicon, but from the human capacity to listen, remember, and sing. In the year 137, China's imperial court received an urgent report from the western frontier wells that had flowed steadily for generations were suddenly bubbling with mud, their waters turning murky and unnaturally warm. Days later, the earth shuddered violently, leveling villages across the region. To the Han Dynasty officials, this wasn't just coincidence, it was a warning system, a natural alarm bell they'd learned to heed centuries before seismographs existed. Ancient Chinese earthquake prediction didn't rely on gleaming machinery or complex algorithms. Instead, it tapped into something far more subtle, the Earth's whispers as heard through the behavior of animals and the trembling of groundwater. The brilliance of their method lay in its simplicity and scale. By 129, the imperial astronomer Zhang Heng had already invented his famed seismoscope, but long before bronze dragons dropped their balls, the Chinese had established the world's first state-sponsored earthquake monitoring network. Officials in every province were ordered to document peculiarities: swarms of rats fleeing burrows, chickens refusing to roost, serpents emerging en masse from hibernation in dead of winter. Most telling of all were the wells, underground aquifers sensitive to tectonic stress, often changed character before a quake. Waters might recede inexplicably or surge with silt, while gases like radon, released from shifting rock, sometimes made ponds fizz like boiling pots. These signs weren't superstition. Modern geophysics confirms they're rooted in measurable phenomena. Take the Haicheng earthquake of 1975. Chinese seismologists, blending ancient observation with modern instruments, noticed dogs howling incessantly and cattle tearing free from pens days before the tremors. Evacuations were ordered, and when the magnitude 7.3 quake struck, casualties were remarkably low. It remains one of the few major earthquakes successfully predicted in modern history, using principles straight from 2nd century scrolls. The science behind these phenomena is now well documented. Before an earthquake, the buildup of tectonic stress generates electrical charges in rock, a phenomenon called the piezoelectric effect. Animals, particularly those sensitive to electromagnetic fields like pigeons or catfish, detect these shifts and panic, Groundwater, forced through collapsing pores in stressed rock, carries dissolved minerals that alter taste and clarity. Even the Romans noted lakes draining before quakes, but the Chinese systematized these observations into something resembling early predictive analytics. What set China's approach apart was its bureaucratic rigor. Provincial magistrates maintained strange phenomena logs, cross-referencing reports to distinguish true precursors from random anomalies. A single oddity might be coincidence, but snakes abandoning hibernation plus well water turning acidic plus erratic bird flight patterns, that triad signaled an impending disaster. The system wasn't perfect. False alarms occurred, but its very existence reveals a startlingly modern grasp of statistical correlation. Today, the European Space Agency's Animal Sentinel project monitors livestock movement via satellite tags, seeking patterns that might forewarn of quakes. Japanese researchers study eels twitching in aquarium tanks, while California's USCS has experimented with crowdsourced apps reporting abnormal pet behavior. All are, in essence, high-tech revivals of an ancient Chinese innovation, the idea that the Earth doesn't quake without signaling first. There's poetry in this convergence of old and new. Zhang Heng's seismoscope, for all its ingenuity, could only confirm quakes after they'd begun. But the true foresight belonged to those nameless officials watching wells and wildlife, proving sometimes the most advanced technology isn't hardware at all. It's the patience to observe, the wisdom to connect the dots, and the humility to learn from creatures who have sensed the planet's rhythms far longer than we have. Hidden in the vaults of Yale University's Voynich Library lies a book that has defied comprehension for over 500 years, the Voynich Manuscript. This 15th century parchment, roughly the size of a modern paperback, bursts with swirling, unreadable text penned in an alphabet unlike any known language, accompanied by illustrations that blur the line between botany and fantasy. Its pages overflow with bizarre plants sporting leaves that spiral like DNA helixes, nude women bathing in emerald green tubes resembling laboratory apparatus, and celestial charts mapping constellations no astronomer recognizes. To modern eyes, it feels less like a medieval manuscript and more like an alien encyclopedia or the sketchbook of a time traveler, a puzzle so complex that even the greatest cryptographers of the 20th century, including teams who cracked Nazi codes, have surrendered in frustration. What makes the Voynich manuscript so tantalizing isn't just its indecipherable script, it's the unsettling precision of its design. Statistical analyses reveal patterns eerily similar to natural languages, with word repetitions and sentence structures that suggest genuine meaning rather than gibberish. The text follows Zipf's law, a linguistic principle where certain words recur frequently, like the or and in English, a trait nearly impossible to fake convincingly. Yet despite decades of supercomputer analysis and artificial intelligence scrutiny, not a single word has been definitively decoded. Some theorists propose it's an elaborate hoax, but the manuscript's vellum has been carbon dated to the early 1400s, and its ink composition matches period recipes. This wasn't a Renaissance prank. It was someone's life's work. The illustrations only deepen the mystery. Herbal pages feature flora with no earthly counterparts, plants with leaves growing in fractal patterns or roots shaped like human organs. One section depicts zodiac-like diagrams, but the symbols defy traditional astrological systems, with unfamiliar female figures holding stars as if arranging them deliberately. The most haunting section, dubbed biological, shows dozens of hairless women submerged in interconnected green pools, their bodies linked by tubes and funnels resembling an archaic diagram of a circulatory system or chemical refinery. It's as if the author were trying to visualize processes biological, alchemical, or otherwise that wouldn't be formally understood for centuries. Cryptographers have attacked the manuscript from every angle. Some argue it's a lost language, others a sophisticated cipher requiring a keyword or cipher wheel lost to history. Recent AI analyzers suggest the text might be encoded Hebrew or Proto-Romance, but translations remain speculative at best. The most chilling theory, that it's glossolalia written, speaking in tongues, transcribing visions from a mind unmoored from conventional reality. Yet the Voynich's greatest intrigue lies in how it parallels modern encryption. Just as today's blockchain or quantum cryptography baffles the uninitiated, the manuscript represents a 15th century equivalent of locking knowledge behind a firewall. Was it a pharmacopoeia of forbidden herbal remedies hidden to evade the church's scrutiny? An alchemist's diary, its recipes obscured to protect dangerous secrets, or something far stranger, a deliberate attempt to communicate with the future, using symbols only an era with advanced pattern recognition could untangle. The manuscript's very existence forces us to reconsider what prediction means. It doesn't forecast a specific technology, but it embodies the timeless human urge to encode knowledge beyond the grasp of contemporaries. In an age where we encrypt everything from bank transactions to private messages, the Voynich reminds us that the battle between secrecy and curiosity is as old as writing itself, and that some codes refuse to yield no matter how many centuries pass. Centuries before Charles Goodyear patented vulcanized rubber in 1844, the Olmec civilization of ancient Mesoamerica was already playing ball, literally. Deep in the steamy lowlands of what's now Mexico, archaeologists have unearthed solid rubber balls dating back to 1600 BCE, some as large as basketballs and weighing up to 8 pounds. These weren't just lumps of raw latex, they were engineered products, processed through a sophisticated chemical treatment that transformed sticky tree sap into bouncy, durable spheres. The Olmec didn't just stumble upon rubber, they mastered it, developing a proto-industrial process that wouldn't be replicated in the modern world for another 3,000 years. The secret lay in the sacred sapodilla tree. Olmec craftsmen harvested its latex, then mixed it with juice from the morning glory vine, a concoction modern chemists have identified as a natural sulfur compound. When heated over fires, this mixture underwent a molecular transformation, the sulfur creating cross-links between rubber's polymer chains. The result: a material that retained elasticity without melting in the tropical heat or turning brittle in cooler temperatures. Sound familiar? It's the same basic principle Goodyear discovered, minus the laboratories and patents. But the Olmec didn't stop at toys. Rubber was integral to their cosmology and commerce. Ball games held in carved stone courts weren't just sport. They were ritual reenactments of celestial battles, with rubber balls symbolizing the sun's movement across the sky. The material also lined tool handles, waterproof textiles, and even formed makeshift sandals, proving its versatility. At the El Manotti sacrificial site, researchers found rubber balls placed alongside jade axes and ceremonial daggers, suggesting it held spiritual value comparable to precious stones. The real shock comes when you compare Olmec rubber to its 19th century counterpart. Modern testing shows their vulcanized balls could rebound to nearly 70% of their drop height, on par with today's sports equipment. Spanish conquistadors, encountering the bouncing balls for the first time, wrote of their unnatural liveliness, assuming they must contain hidden spirits. Little did they know, the magic wasn't supernatural, it was chemistry, honed through generations of experimentation. What's heartbreaking is how close this knowledge came to being lost forever. The Spanish destroyed rubber artifacts as pagan curiosities, and the exact Olmec morning glory formula vanished with their civilization. It wasn't until 2011 that researchers, analyzing residue on ancient balls, cracked the recipe's code. Now, materials scientists study Olmec techniques for eco-friendly rubber alternatives, marveling at how a culture without writing or metal tools achieved such precision. The Olmec's legacy bounces back to us every time a car tires rolls or a basketball swishes through a net. Their story isn't just about predicting modern industry, It's a reminder that innovation isn't the birthright of any one era or culture. Sometimes progress echoes across millennia, waiting for the right moment to rebound into history. From the celestial calculators of the Maya to the self-healing concrete of Rome, from the flying machines of Da Vinci to the eerie precision of the Baghdad Battery, these 25 ancient predictions form a mosaic of human ingenuity that stretches across continents and centuries. Each example we've explored isn't just a curious coincidence, it's a testament to minds that, thousands of years ago, dared to envision a world beyond the limits of their own time. How did they do it? Were these cultures simply lucky, spotting patterns in the chaos of nature that happened to align with future discoveries? Or did they possess fragments of knowledge, scientific, spiritual, or otherwise, that history somehow misplaced? Consider the Antikythera Mechanism, its gears whispering secrets of astronomy the Greeks shouldn't have known, or the Vimanas texts describing flight with an accuracy that feels less like myth and more like technical documentation. These weren't vague premonitions, they were detailed, deliberate, and often backed by physical artifacts that defy easy dismissal. Maybe the answer isn't binary. Perhaps ancient innovators didn't predict our technology so much as tap into universal principles, physics, mathematics, material science that resurface whenever human curiosity meets necessity. What's undeniable is how these discoveries reframe progress itself. Innovation isn't a straight line, it's a spiral with ideas echoing across millennia. The Inca's earthquake-proof masonry mirrors modern seismic engineering. The Persian wind catchers foreshadowed sustainable architecture. Even the Voynich manuscript, stubbornly unreadable, reminds us that encryption isn't a digital age invention. It's as old as humanity's urge to protect its secrets. So here's the real question. If these thinkers could glimpse fragments of our world centuries ahead of their time, what does that say about the ideas we dismiss as impossible today? The past keeps surprising us, not because it was primitive, but because we keep underestimating it. Maybe the next breakthrough isn't just about inventing something new, it's about rediscovering what's been forgotten. Now it's your turn. Which of these 25 examples left you awestruck? Was it Zhang Heng's earthquake detector, Hero's steam engine, or something else entirely? Drop your favorites in the comments, and if you're hungry for more mysteries from lost technologies to unsolved historical puzzles, hit subscribe and join us as we keep digging into the past to illuminate the future. After all, the next great discovery might not be ahead of us, but hidden behind, waiting for its moment to be seen anew.